Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about my dog's disorder. Cole, our dog, who is now just over 1 year old, he turned 1 on March the 12th, has megaesophagus. Megaesophagus, by definition, is a generalized enlargement of the esophagus, which connects the throat to the stomach. This generalized enlargement also causes disabled motility. You could go anywhere from decreased motility all the way down to no motility at all in the esophagus. And that motility of the muscles of the esophagus is actually what allows food and liquid to pass from the mouth down to the stomach. I will preface this whole thing by saying that Cole is very lucky when it comes to his megaesophagus. He does not have it nearly as severe as many of the cases that I have seen. Cole was actually at the local Humane Society here in our county, and my husband and I had been kind of thinking about whether or not we wanted to get a dog for some time, and we kind of jumped. And so on July the 1st of 2017, we actually decided we were going to go out to PetSmart and look and see if any of the adoption groups had a dog that would fit into our family. We actually did not find one there. We ended up deciding, okay, we're going to go out to the Warwick Humane Society and we'll look there, and if nothing, then we'll try another weekend. Well, while we were at the Warwick Humane Society, we came across Cole, and he had the tag on his cage that said that he was special needs, and so of course his adoption fee was a little more expensive to offset his veterinary costs. And then of course they gave you a generalized description of his needs, but we had actually been kind of following Cole's story a little bit on the Humane Society's Facebook page because, as I said, we'd been thinking for a while about adopting a dog, and we knew that we wanted to rescue, and something about Cole just really tugged on our hearts. Not only was he super cute because he is actually a full-blooded Labrador Retriever. He is charcoal or silver. I believe at the Humane Society they called him charcoal, but like when we come across people who know a lot about labs, they tell us he's silver. I don't know anything about purebred dogs, so I really couldn't say one way or the other, but he is more charcoal in color. He is closer to black than he is to the lighter gray, but he's dark gray. I'm going to insert some random pictures of Cole and like how he looked when we adopted him and how far he's come since then. So after getting Cole out of his cage, taking him on a little walk, and just kind of seeing what kind of temperament he had as a puppy, he was between 3 and 4 months old when we adopted him. We decided that he seemed like a really good fit for us, and something in our hearts just told us that we couldn't leave him. And even to this day, we're like, what would have happened if we would have left him? Would he have ever gotten adopted? Would he still be with that Humane Society? Would they have sent him off somewhere in hopes that he'd get adopted somewhere else? So I'm very glad that we made the jump. And all of the workers there at the Humane Society that day were super excited that we were adopting him. And of course they had their reservations, and I told them that we had done a little bit of research into megaesophagus when we saw Cole's story on their page, and come to find out Trevor's Aunt Sally, actually she's cousin, but I think we call her Aunt Sally. But anyway, she lives out in California, and several years ago, her dog Walker, he was a lab, and he also had megaesophagus, but he got megaesophagus later in life. Now Cole was born with his megaesophagus, and so as soon as we adopted him and we found out about Sally, because I knew that Walker had some issues. I had never met Walker, and Trevor didn't know what his whole diagnosis was or anything like that. He had no idea that it was the same thing. And so Trevor's grandma had told us, hey, you need to call Sally because she knows a lot about this kind of thing. And so we were Facebook messaging her because that's the easiest way to contact her for us. And we were going back and forth, and she was giving us all sorts of little tips and tricks. And so we were like immediately on board with, we're going to get this dog. We're going to, get his weight up, because when we got him, and like I said, I'll try to insert a picture, he was so skinny. He was skin and bones. You could see all of his ribs. You could see his hip bones. Poor little thing. And I mean, at the time that we adopted him, they told us that they were feeding him 6 times a day. Between morning and night, they're feeding him 6 times a day, and it was small increments, and it was wet food only. Cole actually has a little bit of his own backstory when it not necessarily even comes to megaesophagus, but just, what has happened to him before we got hold of him. And like I said, he was between 3 and 4 months old when we got him, and he was bred by a breeder pretty close to here, maybe within about 30 to 45 minutes of where we live. And the breeder had sold him, of course, as a puppy to, I don't know if it was a couple or an individual or what, but I guess at the time that he was bought from them, I don't know if they couldn't take care of him at that time, or if they were like on a trip or what, but he was boarded at a vet's office. And I don't know the name of this vet, and I wish that I did. Not that I would plaster it, because I wouldn't do something like that, but I just wish that I could tell people not to go there. And it wasn't anything local, so I do know that it was several hours away from here. The person who bought him lives several hours away from here, and so I don't have any worries about any of the places in my area. However, so he was boarded, and in the time that he was boarded, and keep in mind he's like an 8-week-old puppy, in the time that he was boarded, he lost 11 pounds because he was throwing up, regurgitating, all of that stuff that dogs with megaesophagus do. And they couldn't, he's at a vet's office, so why this wasn't paid more close attention to, it wasn't like taken care of a little better, really just baffles me. But the person who bought him was like, I'm not dealing with this, gave him back to the breeder, and the breeder, of course, gave them another puppy. They were just like, okay, well, here, have another puppy instead, and then the breeder dumped him at the Humane Society, which I say dumped, they surrendered him. The whole thing about it just bothers me, and I don't know, it's probably because I'm extremely protective over him, because he is my dog now, and his whole story was absolutely devastating to me whenever I first heard it, and I'm so glad that we were able to get him and get him to the point that he is today. He has gained a lot of weight. There's no longer any concern about his weight, and we are actually at the point now where he has not had any issues with regurgitation or anything since about October. And that is astounding, because when we first got him, it was every night, sometimes every couple of hours, sometimes all night. Sometimes it would be from the minute that we got home from work all the way till we went to bed at night, and then he would curl up. And I mean, Cole, like I said, he's pretty lucky in terms of the severity of his megaesophagus. I've seen a lot worse cases. I personally never saw his x-rays or anything like that. I know that they were completed by the vet that the Humane Society chooses to go through, and we actually decided to place Cole with a different vet. I did some calling around when we adopted him and asked pretty much every office if they had any knowledge of megaesophagus. Several offices told me that there was no point in bringing in a dog with megaesophagus unless I was planning to euthanize him. And there were a few offices that basically were like, he has no quality of life, there's no point. Other offices that were just like, I've never even heard of that. And then we came across our vet, and he is an incredible vet. He's like in the same mindset that we are, as far as like Cole has a fighting chance, and I'm so glad that we found him, because like I said, a lot of vets were just like, there's no point, just get rid of him. And it kind of makes me wonder if that's kind of what the vet that he was boarded at had said to the people who bought him from the breeder. I don't know. But long story short, he has come a long way, and I think that that's not only due to the work on our part, but also on his. Like, his food changes frequently, or it did for a long time. His food changed frequently, and there were times where we weren't feeding him enough and we didn't really know it. I mean, he was still gaining weight, but then he would grow and he would lose weight, and so we finally got to a point where the calorie intake was a more happy medium, and so he's been very patient with us. We've had to be very patient with him, and now we're at the point where we're considering retesting him to see if his mega esophagus has resolved. Now, Cole has what they call idiopathic congenital omega esophagus, and that basically means that he, of course, had it from birth. That's the congenital part, and that the idiopathic part is basically states that there is no specific reason why. A lot of dogs with mega esophagus when they're born actually have what's called PRAA, or a persistent right aortic arch, and we were hopeful that this was the case for Cole, because with persistent right aortic arch, a majority of the time, sometimes they feel like they're not a candidate for surgery, but a majority of the time they can get surgery, they can have that PRAA fixed, and then that will subsequently fix the mega esophagus as the esophagus is allowed to get back to its normal shape. Now, there are cases of mega esophagus with no PRAA that are just idiopathic congenital like Cole's that have resolved. There are cases of mega esophagus where they get it later on in the dog's life and they've resolved, but it is pretty rare. And so while we are hopeful that that is going to be the case for Cole, we're also very realistic in understanding that it's probably not actually that it has resolved, and more or less that we've finally found the rhythm. We found treats that work for him. We've found toys that work for him, that he, even when he shreds them, he doesn't get enough pieces that could actually get stuck in his throat. We found a water bowl that works for him. And we have found, a food that works for him that's also not really high maintenance for us. Some of the foods we've done for him before have been a little more high maintenance, required a lot more work. And so I think we're kind of at the point with him now where, if it didn't resolve itself, it's fine. We can deal with it. We've managed it this long. We've had him for 9 months now. And while that doesn't seem like a long time in the grand scheme of a dog's life, it really is, because a lot of these dogs with mega esophagus, even little puppies, pass away in the first few months, and it's so sad. I'm on 2 Facebook groups. I can't exactly remember the name of the one. The first one is the Upright Canine Brigade, and the second one is called the Canine Mega Esophagus Support Group. I'm pretty sure it's some variation of those words. And one of them, the Mega Esophagus Support Group, was recommended to us by Sally. And then the other one I just came across because of being in this group. And they have both just been lifesavers. Everything from treats to, oh my gosh, why is this happening, to, sharing positive and negative stories have just been so wonderful on those groups. And for the people who have given us advice, I just thank you immensely, because like I said, Cole is in a really good place, and we couldn't have done it without all the support from not only the people who have had experience with it, but also from our family and friends who, even though at first looked at us like we were crazy for adopting a dog with a disorder, in the end, we're just like, he's just like any other dog, but he just has to be fed special. And a lot of times you'll hear about mega esophagus and you'll say, okay, so that requires a Bailey chair. Well, Cole won't sit in a Bailey chair. He hates it. So he actually stands on the island in our kitchen, and we feed him that way. A lot of people will feed their dogs on the stairs. They'll just feed them in an elevated bowl, but that seems to work for Cole. He also has a slow feeder water bowl, and so you can buy them on Amazon, and I'll link it down below. And it's basically a water bowl that you have the regular bowl, you put water in it, and then on top of the water sits this floating disc, and it has a little tiny hole in it, so the more he drinks out of it, a little bit more water will come out, but basically he can't gulp. And so even for dogs who are gulpers and maybe just don't have problems, but they just gulp and it causes them to throw up and stuff, that would be a good idea. But I just wanted to give a general overview of Cole's mega esophagus and everything that goes on. I do plan to post some tips or some things that we've learned along the way in reference to mega esophagus. And I truly hope that these videos about his disorder can help other people who maybe not even just have a dog with mega esophagus, but maybe have a dog with any type of disorder that you just have to stop and remember to have patience, and then eventually you'll work it out and it'll be okay. Everything with Cole was trial and error, and we are finally in such a good place, and I'm so thankful. But like I said, I just wanted to give a general overview. More videos will be coming with with specific tips about mega esophagus or specific information about different parts of mega esophagus, because while it may seem like one small definition, it is a pretty complicated disorder when you look at all of the different realms and all of the different intensities of the disorder itself. But I thank you guys so much for watching today. I really appreciate you guys being here and going through the beginning parts of my channel where I start to set up all the different playlists. I really hope that you've enjoyed all of my videos. If you have any suggestions for the next video, feel free to post that below, and feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks so much. Bye.